Ethan's hands shook as he stared at the screen. The words from his father burned into his mind, leaving him frozen. "Don't contact us again. Don't come around. You're on your own now." It was so sudden, so cold, so final that it felt like someone had slammed a door in his face and locked it forever. For a moment he couldn't breathe. He stared at the words, hoping they would blur, fade, or somehow not mean what they clearly did. But they didn't. They were real, and they were devastating. His father, the man who had guided him, protected him, and been the center of his life, had turned away. Not just away, but forcefully, decisively, as if Ethan had become a stranger overnight. He sank into his chair, feeling the weight of 1,000 memories pressing down on him. The laughter of birthdays, the warmth of Christmas mornings, the comfort of quiet talks on the porch, all of it now seemed like a cruel joke. He had trusted his father implicitly, relied on his guidance, believed in his love. And now, a single text had shattered everything. The betrayal was sharp, like a knife twisting in his chest. It wasn't just the message itself. It was the finality, the certainty that there was no room for explanation, no chance for reconciliation. Ethan tried to recall what could have gone wrong. Was it something he said? Something he didn't do? Something he hadn't known about? He replayed every interaction over the past months, examining every conversation, every look, every silence. Nothing seemed to justify this. Nothing made sense. His thoughts spiraled. He felt anger rising, first a hot, furious wave of it, then fear, then a deep, gnawing sadness that left him hollow. He didn't just feel rejected. He felt abandoned, cast aside, as if he had become invisible to the people who were supposed to be his family. The house felt emptier than ever. Every corner seemed to echo with memories of a family that no longer existed for him. The silence pressed against him, making it hard to think. Ethan tried calling, but there was no answer. Texts went unread, ignored. Even his mother didn't reach out. It was as if the world had suddenly decided to erase him from its story. The isolation made the anger burn hotter. It wasn't just that he had been rejected, it was the injustice of it. He had given so much, tried to be a good son, tried to help, tried to care. And this was the reward. Hours passed, maybe even a whole day, though Ethan had no sense of time. His thoughts kept returning to one idea: revenge. Not necessarily something cruel, not something illegal, but a way to make them understand the pain they had caused. He imagined confronting his father, showing him what it felt like to be abandoned, to feel small and powerless. He imagined words sharp as knives, actions that would finally make them see what they had done. The fantasy consumed him, filling him with a dangerous mix of satisfaction and dread. The anger was sweet in his imagination, almost comforting, but also terrifying. Could he actually go through with it? Should he? It wasn't just the father who hurt him. His sister, Claire, had remained silent too. She had always been close to him. The one person he thought would understand. The one person who would fight for him if anyone turned against him. Yet she had stayed quiet, and that stung more than he wanted to admit. Betrayal didn't always come from enemies. Sometimes it came from those you trusted most. Ethan felt a deep fissure opening inside him. He wanted to lash out, but he also wanted to understand. Part of him hoped there was a reason, a secret explanation that would make sense. Something that could patch the wound before it festered into hatred. Days passed in a blur of restless pacing, sleepless nights and unanswered messages. Ethan's anger simmered beneath the surface, ready to explode at the slightest trigger. Every notification on his phone made him jump, hoping for a message from Claire, hoping for anything to explain, to clarify, to connect. But nothing came. The silence was deafening, oppressive, almost physical. It pressed on his chest, made his head ache, and forced him to confront feelings he had never wanted to face alone. Fear, despair, and the painful realization that his family might not be coming back. Then, one evening, there was a flicker of hope. A message appeared, not from his father, but from Claire. It was brief, but it made his heart leap. "I need to tell you something. Meet me at the old cafe, 7 p.m., no one else." The words were simple, but they carried weight. After days of being shut out, of feeling invisible and unwanted, Claire was reaching out. She wanted to talk. She had something to tell him. The idea that she had been holding back a secret, something that might explain everything, filled him with anticipation and anxiety all at once. Ethan spent the evening in restless preparation, pacing the small apartment, imagining what Claire might say. Would it explain why their father had texted such cruel words? Would it justify the rejection? Or would it reveal something even more shocking, something that would deepen the pain? His mind raced through possibilities, each more intense than the last. The anger and hurt was still there, simmering just below the surface, but now mixed with a fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, there was an explanation by the time he arrived. At the cafe, the sun had dipped low, casting long shadows across the streets. Claire was already there, sitting at their old corner table, the one where they had spent countless hours as children talking and planning adventures. Her hands shook slightly as she clutched her tea, and her eyes, full of emotion, met his. Ethan could see the weight of guilt and urgency in her expression. She opened her mouth to speak, and for a moment, the world narrowed to just the two of them. "I've been hiding something," she said quietly, almost afraid he would judge her. "Something Dad made me promise not to tell you. But you deserve to know." Her voice was steady, but the tremor in her hands betrayed her fear. Ethan leaned in, desperate to hear, to finally understand the reason behind the cruel words that had shattered his life. The betrayal had been sharp, but maybe now, with the truth, he could make sense of it. Maybe now, the anger could be tempered. With understanding, the hurt softened by clarity. Ethan's chest tightened with anticipation. The secret Claire was about to reveal could change everything. It could be the key to understanding, the bridge that would connect the chasm of pain between him and his family. Or it could open new wounds, deeper and more painful than before. He didn't know which it would be, but he knew that his life, as he had known it, was about to shift forever. The night hung heavy around them, the cafe buzzing with quiet murmurs of other people oblivious to the storm about to unfold. Ethan's heart pounded as he prepared to hear the truth that might finally explain why he had been abandoned. And in that moment, the mixture of fear, hope, and simmering desire for justice set the stage for the journey ahead. Ethan knew he would have to make choices that could lead to confrontation, to revenge, or to something far harder: understanding, forgiveness, and healing. The first part of the story, the betrayal, the abandonment, the anger, was complete. Now, the next chapter, the one where secrets would be revealed and decisions made, was about to begin. Ethan left the cafe with Claire's words echoing in his mind. Her tone had been soft but urgent, and the way she looked at him carried the weight of a truth he hadn't been ready for. She had promised to reveal something about their father, something that could explain the cruel text, something that might even justify it. But even with that promise, Ethan felt a knot of anger tightening in his chest. The betrayal had been real, sharp, and lingering, and part of him couldn't let it go so easily. The streets felt colder than usual as he walked home, the evening air biting at his skin. His thoughts raced. What could Claire possibly know that he didn't? Was it a secret, a financial issue, a hidden threat, or something darker? Every possibility churned inside him, mixing fear with anticipation. The desire for revenge that had begun the day he read the text flared again, stronger and more consuming. He wanted to confront his father, to make him feel even a fraction of the pain he had endured. He wanted to demand answers, to expose the lies, to make the rejection real for his father as it had been real for him. Ethan spent the night pacing, unable to sleep. He drafted countless messages in his mind, imagining the perfect words to strike at his father's pride and ego. He imagined the look of shock and guilt on his father's face, the anger he would feel, the embarrassment. He pictured scenes of confrontation, each one satisfying in its own way. But then, almost immediately, guilt and doubt crept in. What if Claire's secret changed everything? What if there was a reason behind the cruelty? A reason he hadn't considered? The anger and desire for revenge warred with the possibility of understanding. He felt torn between two paths, one of retaliation and one of patience, one that could destroy, and one that might heal. By morning, Ethan had made a plan. He would wait for Claire to reveal the truth. He wouldn't act impulsively, not yet. But every passing hour felt unbearable. He checked his phone constantly, imagining her messages appearing, promising answers. Each time he felt a pang of frustration at her delay, another wave of anger surged. He replayed the father's text in his mind over and over, each word echoing like a hammer striking at his sense of trust. He tried to convince himself to calm down, to breathe, to think clearly, but the fire of betrayal burned too hot to ignore. When Claire finally called, her voice was quiet but firm. She asked him to meet again, somewhere private, somewhere they could talk without interruptions. Ethan's heart raced. He agreed immediately, leaving everything else behind. He arrived early, his mind buzzing with scenarios, each more intense than the last. Would he confront his father directly afterward? Would he reveal his own anger, his own desire for revenge? Or would he wait, biding his time until the perfect moment? The uncertainty gnawed at him, yet it also sharpened his focus, making every step toward the cafe feel like moving deeper into a trap of his own making. Claire arrived minutes later, her expression somber. She motioned him to sit, and they ordered tea in silence. Then she spoke, her voice low, careful but unwavering. She explained that their father had been facing immense pressure at work, a crisis that he had hidden from the family. It wasn't personal. The text, the cold words, were his way of protecting Ethan from the fallout, from financial ruin or scandal. He had believed that cutting Ethan off temporarily would shield him from the consequences, from the chaos that he thought would destroy everything. Claire's words hit Ethan like a wave. Relief mingled with disbelief. How could such an extreme action, one that had felt like betrayal, have been driven by fear and care? Ethan's mind spun. He wanted to feel relief, to embrace understanding, but the anger still lingered. The sense of injustice, the sting of abandonment, didn't disappear instantly. He wanted answers, explanations, and perhaps in the back of his mind, revenge. Not because he hated his father, but because the pain of betrayal demanded it. His thoughts were a storm of conflicting emotions: love, hurt, confusion, and desire for retribution. He realized the line between justice and revenge was thinner than he had imagined, and that his next actions would define which side he would choose. For days, Ethan wrestled with these emotions. Every time he tried to sleep, his mind replayed moments of rejection, moments of the father's distant gaze, the words that had made him feel cast aside. He drafted scenarios in which he could confront his father publicly, expose the truth to everyone, show him what it felt like to be abandoned. He imagined humiliating him, making him feel guilt and shame, watching him squirm under the weight of the consequences. Each idea gave him a rush of satisfaction, but also left a bitter aftertaste, a reminder that revenge could consume him entirely. Claire remained his anchor. She reached out daily, sharing details, explaining things there father could not. She told him about the pressure, the fear, the decisions made under stress. She begged him to consider the consequences of acting in anger, to weigh whether revenge would truly heal or only deepen the wounds. Ethan listened, but it was a struggle. He wanted justice, and justice, in his mind, felt like a payoff for the pain he had suffered. But Claire's voice reminded him that truth and understanding were not the same as vengeance, and that anger, once acted upon, could never be taken back as he planned. Ethan started noticing the subtle ways his father's choices had affected him beyond the text. Memories that once seemed ordinary now carried layers of meaning. Times he had been shut out of family decisions, moments when he felt unseen, all clicked into a pattern of fear-driven choices rather than deliberate cruelty. He began to understand that his father had been flawed, human, and scared. But the anger didn't vanish, it merely became more complicated, layered with empathy. Ethan realized that his desire for revenge was not just about his father. It was about the hurt, the humiliation, the need to reclaim control over a life that had suddenly felt powerless. The tension inside him built toward a breaking point. Every plan, every imagined confrontation, every scenario where he could force his father to acknowledge the pain he caused became more vivid. He visualized himself standing in his father's office, words sharp, eyes burning, exposing every secret, every misstep, every failure. And yet, the thought of Claire's words, of her gentle warnings, held him back. They reminded him that the ultimate power was not in making his father suffer, but in choosing how he would respond, in deciding whether to let anger rule or understanding guide him. One night, as he sat alone in his apartment, Ethan realized that the next step would define him. He could act now, strike while the pain was fresh, and claim a hollow victory in revenge. Or he could wait, seek the truth fully, and confront the situation with clarity and intention. The decision was agonizing. His pulse raced, his hands trembled, and his mind raced with all the possibilities. Every fiber of his being demanded action, but every instinct whispered caution. He finally understood that this part of his journey, this struggle, this battle with desire and morality was more important than the outcome itself. Revenge was tempting, intoxicating, almost addictive. It offered a quick release, a momentary sense of justice. But the consequences could be permanent, irreversible. His father's mistakes, his anger, the betrayal he had felt, they were not excuses for harm, but a challenge for him to navigate wisely. He realized that the real test was whether he could channel his emotions into something constructive, something that might heal instead of destroy. Claire's secret loomed over him like a shadow, both a warning and a key. Ethan knew that what she would reveal next could either validate his plans for revenge or shatter them completely. He felt the pull of two worlds, one where anger ruled, where he could punish, confront, and claim a sense of control, and another where understanding and truth could bring closure, even if it was harder, slower, and less immediately satisfying. The struggle consumed him, shaped his every thought, and forced him to face the reality that the desire for vengeance was a dangerous, complicated force that could define his future if he let it. Ethan stood outside his father's office building. the city lights casting long reflections across the wet pavement. His heart pounded in his chest, each beat echoing the turmoil inside him. In his hand, he held a folder, thick with evidence, of the truth Claire had shared, the hidden pressures, the financial crises, the secrets that had driven their father to push him away. For days, he had wrestled with anger, hurt, and the desire for revenge. Now, the moment had come. He could confront his father, expose the truth, make him feel even a fraction of the pain he had endured. He could let the rage that had burned inside him for weeks finally find release. Every step toward the building felt heavier than the last. Memories of the past flooded his mind. Childhood mornings when his father had smiled at him proudly, late nights spent talking about dreams and failures, the laughter that had once filled the house. And then the text, the sudden rejection, the silence that followed. Ethan had imagined this confrontation countless times, each scenario more satisfying than the last. In his mind, his father would be shocked, guilty, forced to see the consequences of his actions. Ethan's pulse quickened at the thought, a rush of anticipation mixed with fear. As he entered the building, the sterile smell of polished floors and fluorescent lights pressed against him. He checked his watch. It was nearly 5 minutes until his father's office would close. This was his chance, the moment when the confrontation would be unavoidable. The folder felt heavy in his hand, not just with paper but with the weight of his anger, his betrayal, and the need for justice. He rehearsed his words silently, imagining the sharpness of his tone, the impact of his questions, the way the truth could cut through years of lies and silence. Ethan arrived at the office door and hesitated. His father's nameplate gleamed under the office light. An unspoken challenge. He could push the door open and let the words fly, let his father experience the guilt and shame he had felt. But then he remembered Claire's warning, her plea, to consider the consequences of acting in anger. What if revenge didn't bring relief, but only deeper pain? What if his actions shattered the fragile chance of reconciliation? Ethan's fingers tightened around the folder. He had the power to hurt, but the power to heal was equally within his grasp. He entered the office quietly. His father looked up from his desk, eyes widening in surprise. "Ethan, what are you?" His voice faltered, unsure, tense. The look on his father's face mirrored Ethan's own confusion and hurt. For a moment, the rage that had driven him here felt smaller, fragile against the complexity of their shared history. He could see the fear and guilt etched into his father's features. He could see that the man who had hurt him was not a villain, but someone flawed, scared, human. Ethan took a deep breath. The folder remained in his hand, unopened. Every instinct screamed at him to reveal the truth, to make his father squirm, to demand acknowledgement of the pain inflicted. But something shifted. The years of anger, the imagined satisfaction of revenge, began to feel hollow. He remembered Claire's words. Revenge might feel sweet for a moment, but it could never repair the damage, only create new scars. He realized that his father's mistakes, while painful, were driven by fear and protection, not malice. The desire for revenge was still there, simmering, but it was no longer the only force guiding him. He placed the folder on the desk and looked directly at his father. "I know the truth now," he said quietly, each word deliberate. "I understand why you acted the way you did. I know you were scared, and you thought pushing me away would protect me. I won't pretend the pain didn't exist, but I also won't let anger rule me anymore. I'm here to find a way forward." His father's eyes filled with tears. The rigid mask of authority, the years of control and distance, cracked under the weight of emotion. "Ethan, I never wanted you to feel abandoned. I thought I was protecting you. I see now how wrong I was." His voice trembled, a mixture of shame and relief. "I'm so sorry. Can you forgive me?" Ethan felt a rush of conflicting emotions. The anger, the hurt, the betrayal, they were all still there, but they no longer demanded action. He realized that true power wasn't in inflicting pain, but in choosing restraint, in channeling the desire for revenge into understanding and connection. The folder on the desk no longer mattered. It was a symbol of what could have been, a temptation that he had resisted. In that moment, he understood that reconciliation required courage, patience, and empathy, not retaliation. They spoke for hours, uncovering the truth piece by piece. Ethan listened as his father explained the pressures, the hidden crises, fears that had driven him to such extreme measures. He saw the human side of a man he had once idolized, and then condemned. The anger ebbed, replaced by a complex mixture of empathy, sadness, and cautious hope. They discussed mistakes, misunderstandings, and ways to rebuild trust. It was not immediate healing, but it was a start, a path forward that did not rely on revenge or retaliation. As the conversation ended, Ethan stepped out of the office into the night air. The city felt quieter, calmer, somehow lighter. The storm of anger that had consumed him for weeks had not disappeared entirely, but it had transformed. The desire for revenge had been replaced by a desire to understand, to heal, to reclaim control over his own life without harming others. He realized that revenge is often seductive because it promises power and satisfaction, but it rarely delivers real peace. The true strength was in choosing a different path, one that demanded patience, reflection, and courage. Walking home, Ethan reflected on the journey he had taken, from the betrayal that had shattered his sense of family, through the struggle with anger and plotting of revenge, to the climactic choice to confront, not with fury, but with understanding. The moral was clear. Revenge might bring temporary satisfaction, but it rarely heals wounds. True resolution comes from empathy, dialogue, and the courage to face pain without perpetuating it. Ethan felt a quiet pride in his own choice, a recognition that he had risen above the instinct for retaliation and chosen a path that could rebuild, rather than destroy. In the days that followed, the relationship between father and son began to mend. It was tentative at first, careful, but growing stronger with every conversation, every acknowledgement of past mistakes, every shared understanding. Claire remained by Ethan's side, guiding and supporting, a reminder that secrets can protect, but also complicate, and that the truth, when revealed with courage, can offer the chance for redemption. Ethan learned that family, like trust, is fragile and requires effort, forgiveness, and patience to repair. The anger he had felt, the desire for revenge, and the emotional turmoil had not been wasted. They had taught him the value of restraint, the complexity of human behavior, and the power of choice. He had confronted betrayal, faced the temptation to punish, and emerged with clarity, compassion, and a path forward. He understood that while revenge is often imagined as a way to reclaim control, real power lies in controlling oneself, in choosing healing over destruction, and in finding peace amid pain. By the time the sun rose over the city streets, Ethan felt a sense of closure that he had thought impossible weeks ago. The journey had been painful, tense, and full of uncertainty, but it had led him to an understanding that revenge is not the answer. Healing is. Forgiveness, while difficult, allows the past to exist without dictating the future. The storm of that emotion that had driven him to the edge of confrontation had transformed into a calm determination to rebuild, to reconnect, and to live with the knowledge that he had chosen wisely.